Welcome back to The Report. Now for our special feature. Reporter Yasmin Khatun has been speaking to young teenage British Muslim women to ask them about the cases of teenage girls that left for Syria earlier this year. She's been exploring why British girls would want to leave the UK to live under the IS.
From Iraq, from Cambodia, Australia.
With a focus on young Western Muslim men leaving their hometowns to go and live under Islamic State, the smaller but steady group of Muslim women who have left hasn't received as much attention. I'm standing in front of Bristol City Academy, the school attended by 15-year-old Yusra Hussain. Yusra should be in school right now, but instead she's believed to be in Syria, living under Islamic State. But why would a teenager leave her friends, family and life at home to travel thousands of miles away to live in a war-torn country? Outside of Yusra's school, we spoke to some of her friends who said they had made contact with her. The girls we spoke to didn't want to be named, but told us Yusra had told them she's happy. The girls mentioned conversations with Yusra before she left, saying she was super religious and she'd do anything to get to heaven, though they were confused about her decision. A straight-A student, Yusra was described as an intelligent girl who wanted to be a dentist. There have been other similar cases from the UK that have emerged, one case being that of twin girls Salma and Zahra Halan, both aged 16 from Manchester, who left for Syria in July. I recently spoke to 5 young British Muslim girls, all students in London, to ask them why they thought girls their age might want to leave the UK.
What do you think it might be about Islamic State, or the borders that are being held by the Islamic State group, that is so attractive to young British women?
It's just the being seen and being heard. We're all looking to make an impact, make a change in the world. And I feel maybe that a lot of these young people that are my age feel like, wait, you know, by going to Syria, I'll be able to be like a superhero. You know, it's as basic as that. It's these intentions, it's these innocent intentions, which sometimes can obviously be manipulated or interrogated and stuff like that. But when it comes to basics, it's just young people that really do want to make a difference.
The people that I've noticed who actually gone there is because they have seen the atrocities, and I think we should bring it back and say, okay, we can't judge what their intentions are.
What impact do you think a 15-year-old girl could have on helping the people of Iraq and Syria going there? Would it, to be honest, wouldn't you think there'd just be another vulnerable person in the midst of war?
I feel like based on the information they're given on something, they already concluded what to do. They're not thinking about the other impacts.
None of the girls who left showed any signs of their plans in the days before leaving, though it has been mentioned that before 15-year-old Yusra Hussain left Britain, she became tied to her mobile phone. One of the accusations put forward is that social media is being used as a tool to persuade Western Muslims into joining Islamic State, with ideas of how life might be better under IS.
So many young people might think that if I go to Syria, for example, I can, you know, wear the niqab and be praised, and it will be something, a good reputation, and I won't be sworn at, I won't be spat at, I will actually be respected.
Over the last 3 years, hundreds of people from across Britain and Europe have visited the war-torn region for numerous reasons. For humanitarian purposes, to join fighting, and for some to live in what they believe to be a modern-day caliphate. Though the majority who have left are men, dozens of young women have also left their homes to live under IS. Most Muslims say IS have not established a caliphate, and violence purported by the group has been widely condemned. But for the girls who have left for Syria and Iraq to live under the group, it doesn't seem to be making a difference.
Some girls in particular, they don't feel like they belong to the community they're in. They're like detached from the community, so it's so easy to leave it. Like, it just does not mean anything to them. They think that going to Syria will make them feel like they're part of something. They're like sponges. They're young and they'll just like take in anything that's said to them. That's why they're the target.
Whether we're Muslim women or non-Muslim women, we always have this pressure to live up to this certain standard, this certain beauty standard that, oh, we have to be this and we have to be successful now and we have to go to uni, get a degree, get a job. We have all of these expectations, and that's both Muslims and non-Muslims feeling that pressure as women.
The whole thing is how the society over here are engaging with the youngers right now. So I think that's the main thing that we're missing. It's not about the role models that they will go there and, you know, be like Baghdadi or whatever. It's how we engage with the youth, how we talk to them and, you know, hear their views and everything.
Being seen and being heard. For this group, they're young, they're women, they're often from an ethnic minority, and they're Muslim. With pressures to conform to societal ideals, girls like Yusra and Zahra are throwing away British opportunities and rights. But in doing so, they also throw away the expectations and pressures of modern society. Yasmin Khatun, The Report.
Well, we'll be uploading a feature-length version of that focus group discussion onto our report playlist on YouTube very soon, so keep an eye out for that. But now, to discuss what you've just seen is Talat Ahmed from the Muslim Council of Britain, Sheikh Shams Ad Duha, who's an Imam and Director of Ebrahim College, and on the phone we've got Dr. Saleyha Ahsan, who's a journalist and medical doctor who's travelled in Syria. Welcome to the programme, all of you. Talat, one of the things that came across in those interviews is that some of this, and I guess we should say this is a very small proportion of people at all, men, women, anybody who's going, but there's a sense of exclusion from this society that seems to be motivated to go over there. Would you think that's an important driver of this?
Very possibly. I would say that it starts from a young age. I just came from a meeting where we were talking about how young people become disaffected and maybe seeking Islam, they find Islam, but maybe within the family they're not allowed, there's not a platform given to them to talk about how they feel, about what they see in the news and hear of what's happening to their brothers and sisters and you know, in Syria, Iraq. And they need to be able to express their feelings and be challenged and also encouraged to speak and not be shut down, because I think it's always there. It's like it starts from the age of puberty to 18, although the government says that it starts in further education. But I think, you know, that release needs to be given by family, friends, and socially.
We have to say, our reporter found that most of those girls hadn't heard of, for instance, the Muslim Council of Britain. Do you think that the organisations that perhaps should be expressing and are expressing political viewpoints in the Muslim community aren't connecting enough with the youngsters?
That's definitely a factor. I believe that the MCB could do a lot more to engage with young people. We hope by using social media that we can do that, but our work focuses on Britons in the UK and you know, engaging in politics and political discussion here and the social issues that affect us. So one project we'll be working on is encouraging young people to register to vote.
Sheikh, I mean, there is a political environment around all this. Is it, do you think, the case that other political options, other options for, as one of the interviewees said, they're changing the world, aren't as connected to a layer of young people as the one they get from those videos on social media?
Well, yes, I think we can all relate to that, can't we? I think we don't think that the political establishment right now is effective enough to bring about change locally, nationally, in the world, particularly the kind of change that Muslims want, even if Muslims consider it from a selfish point of view and consider it from the point of view of justice, how they would like to see justice and rights of people, their own rights as they would like to see them delivered, and most importantly the freedom for people to be able to freely practice their religion and actually collectively as an ummah the right to have some place on earth where Islam can manifest itself properly with no brutal suppression of it. And I think all of this, for most Muslims, is something that the current system in the world simply doesn't want to or isn't geared up to be able to deliver. And I think that feeds into it. And I think some of the views we heard from the young people are extremely pertinent. And it's a combination of all of those things that basically results in people wanting to go elsewhere.
Dr. Ahsan, you've travelled in Syria. How much do you think that there is a kind of crossover from people, again, as we heard in the interviews, wanting to be part of a charitable and aid-giving process, are then pulled over or perhaps influenced to move over, or perhaps find on the ground that those two things aren't as distinct as we might like to imagine, the question of aid and the question of fighting?
I think I went out twice in my capacity as a doctor and as a freelance journalist twice last year. It's not something that was unusual. I've been to other conflict zones over the years in the same capacity. And it's, I go as a doctor, I responded on a humanitarian perspective, but I also was working journalistically. But, there was an obvious humanitarian need, and my journalistic work was focusing on the lack of that. So, you see all these pictures and all these images, whether it's through the mainstream media or other forms, of severe hardship and suffering for millions of people inside Syria. And what you also see from the international community side, for all those parties that are established to deal with these problems, appearing not to be doing what you'd expect them to do for various reasons, whether that's being sensitive to sovereign state provisions from Syria and the international community not wanting to offend, which all feels rather weak. So people respond with their feet. And it's not and that's normal. Human beings are designed and programmed to want to help. When it was Libya, you had.
Dr. Ahsan, would you say that practically, if we take the kind of desire to be part of a humanitarian operation as perhaps a starting point, is there practically very much that a young teenage girl from this country can do in that kind of war zone?
Well, there you go. What can you do? And that's the tragedy. And I think part of that is down to the fact that what they're witnessing is significant lack of input from the existing agencies that should be doing it. So they take matters onto their own hand. And no, it's not effective. What I've seen, and it's not just isolated to Syria, but other areas too, where you have outsiders coming in. Initially, in the past, in other conflicts, these outsiders coming in would end up being a liability because they're not used to the area.
Let me just stop you there because I just want to bring the conversation back to the studio a minute. Sheikh, do you think that one of the things that's happened here is that although there's a lot of focus, a hostile focus now from the media and the government about people going over to fight in these areas, there was a period really for 2 years after the beginning of the Syrian revolution when the government was saying we support the rebels. The rebels are good people. Do you think that was one of the things that created an atmosphere in which people might not just feel that this is something that, if you're a Muslim, you want to do, but anybody might feel, well, these are good people?
Well, I think that exists anyway, right? I mean, where has there been a conflict or some sort of a disaster or a humanitarian crisis that Muslims haven't wanted to go and offer support to in some capacity or other? And I think the fact that there is now opposition to this creates the kind of frustration that results in a person even changing their mind from wanting to go for humanitarian purposes to something more drastic. Right?
Your college does a lot of work with women. Have you come across the kind of responses that our reporter that Yasmin was getting in that interview?
Well, I mean, we address them, and I mean the mixture of the different age groups of women that come to the college, they come for the answers, and we don't necessarily survey them exactly in that way. But I'm aware through various conversations when we have circles and conversations that these types of sentiments exist, that these are all representative. None of that is inaccurate or out of place. The question, I think that the next question is, well, how do we go from that to somebody going and joining ISIS or joining...
What more could be done? What more do you think perhaps your college could be doing or other institutions could be doing that would prevent that kind of development?
Well, I've always said that we need to be given the space to be able to have discussions that are pertinent to Muslims openly. And I think that space has now been seized out of our hands, in the sense that it isn't easy anymore to have an open conversation around things like jihad, around things like the caliphate, and other aspects of Islam that really can moderate a person's viewpoints based on knowledge, from a position of knowledge, even though that position may not necessarily be the one that the establishment wants to hear.
Ask the same thing to Talat, because I mean, in some ways, just that piece of film of that discussion, you don't see that, and some people might find that even surprising or perhaps even shocking that that discussion should take place. Do you think that's one of the reasons why we aren't dealing with it, that kind of open discussion is suppressed?
I don't believe it's given enough of a platform to discuss that in the mainstream media. The media has been unhelpful in just trying to identify people who are radicalised, rather than looking at early intervention and what work can be done around that.
But also the media is not the platform. The media isn't the platform where the discussions need to happen. The discussions need to happen in the grassroots. They need to happen in the mosques. They need to happen in the Islamic schools and so forth. But over there, these discussions aren't happening. In fact, evidence of those discussions are being used to paint schools as radicalized or putting children at risk of radicalization. So basically what's happening is the strategy that is supposed to tackle radicalization and extremism is actually alienating further and feeding into the narrative that recruits people so that they can go Syria to give their lives up.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to leave it, because that's all we've got time for on this episode of The Report. And my thanks to all my guests for coming in, and to you at home for watching. Do keep up with us on Twitter by following @IslamChannel and by using the hashtag The Report. And you can watch the previous episodes on our playlist on the YouTube channel that the channel runs. So for now, we're going to have to leave you, but we'll leave you with some film of residents in Morocco's flood-stricken city of Guilmim as they begin to clean up after thick, muddy waters raged through their streets last month. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, good night.